My second film in this series of films dedicated to mutual relationship between philosophy and religion, is dedicated to a modern thinker, probably not so well known to you, or perhaps you will hear his name for the first time, as I heard not so far ago his name. And I was surprised that our Nobel Prize winner, as you see, I read a lot of Olga Tokarczuk, and she is, for me, also an philosophical inspiration. And you will see that literature is also important for some religious thinker. And so in this case, I was very pleased and surprised that in her last book, Tender Narrator, in Polish Czuły Narrator, published just a month ago with her Nobel Prize speech, exactly entitled Tender Narrators. Between many sources of inspiration, she mentioned also William Desmond. William Desmond is an Irish philosopher. Uh, well, if we can say that someone is Irish, Polish, or French, because, for example, Desmond, since years, is a teacher at American universities. And he published also in America many of his books. And particularly for an Irish philosopher, it's easy to be because of language. As you know, in Ireland, English is the first language. Irish is very uh, known by few people, really. So the Irish people and Irish culture, our Irish philosophy is written in English. But this is another problem. William Desmond, this is my second figure, my second philosopher interested in religion, whom I would like to present. Olga Tokarczuk mentioned him between Erlich Voegelin, Simone Weil, as those philosophers who are interested in border questions. So, not uh, taking only a very traditional way of making philosophy, but moving into periphery, so to say, and particularly in between. In between is the key word of way how William Desmond is philosophizing. He in fact wrote a kind of trilogy, three books, um, uh, being and the between, ethics and the between, and God and the between. So it means that if you read these three books, each of them are dedicated to this particular field of human reflection. A being means ontology, the essence, what it means to be a human being. So reflection on a being between God and man, between animals and thinking beings. So all this he dealt with these questions in his first volume of this trilogy. In the second, about the ethical questions. So what it means and when we are demonstrating ourselves as a moral being. And the third, perhaps very important for our topic today, God and the between. So how philosophy of religion should be addressed in the modern life. But since our course has an introductory character, so I will not expect from you to read books of Desmond, but I put on the platform just one of his essays, which probably, as usual, how he's writing his philosophy, he wrote an essay in 2016. It was published 6 years ago, 4 years ago, and probably next year we will have also a book which developed main ideas from this essay. So you have this essay, which is entitled Godsends on the Surprise of Revelation. And Godsends is a very tricky word, and you will find his almost philological analysis of what it means, God sends. Is a gift of God, is experiences through which God is giving us something to think about, is revealing to us something. So all this you will find in the first part. And what is important is exactly this surprise. Surprise. You are not expecting from God anything, and He's coming and surprising you. What is for me in any way interesting that William Desmond, is a very rooted in Greek philosophy. And you remember we spoke in our first meeting that for Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and many others, admiration to 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 be fascinated by something was the source of philosophy. So we have here the same idea, right? So the ideas are returning from different directions, but the main idea is the same, that you are not satisfied with what is surround you, but you are open for something new, what is coming from outside, the beauty of nature, the beauty of other person, of animals. So all this could be seen as God sense. In Polish, I was looking for translation, and we can translate it God sense as a dar niebios, dar Boga, or dopust Boży. That, well, finally you accept something, but in the first moment, you are painfully surprised by suffering, by illness, by accident. So it's not so easy to identify a person or an event or something would happen to you as a pleasant experience. So what is important in this essay, and I recommend you, as in case of Abraham Joshua Heschel's essay, No Religion is an Island, that you enter slowly in his way of philosophizing, right? So everyday language, how we use the language, what is behind the history of certain certain expressions which seems to be obvious but are not so obvious. And he's referring also to Ludwig Wittgenstein's philosophy, who was one of the first who actually was attentive to the daily life language. So you are listening what the people are saying and what is behind this language. So a philosopher is also someone who is able to listen, who is able to discover a deeper meaning of things which seems to be very simple. So this is the first, this attentiveness to daily language. The second is talking philosophically about revelation and reason. So, how we are conceptualizing, again, the questions are returning. You remember from our first meetings when we discuss a different genre of philosophizing, letters, treatises, confessions, etc. So here is again this speculative way to think about philosophy, about religion, but using a philosophical concept. I think this is very important that we are not tired in thinking about, asking questions, and not be satisfied with easy answers. So this is the work of a philosopher who are aware that religion is also a sphere, a field of human activities, which you can also deepen, conceptualize to using philosophical concept. And the third part, and perhaps the most surprising, is the story. The story that we are using our. I will tell more about this in the third film, about what it means for us today. But here, I would like to draw your attention to the connection between philosophy, religion, and literature. Literature as a special locus theologicus, we can say, the place of making philosophy, that we are reading novels, poetry as the place where you can touch the divine revelation. And don't be afraid of trying to discover this dimension of literature. And he's using a very short, but one of the last story by well-known Catholic writer. And as you know, in America, there are not so many Catholic writers. Flannery O'Connor. Flannery O'Connor, and this story is entitled exactly a revelation. A revelation. And what is surprising that this is very simple story. If you read it, and I read it just before preparing this class, I was surprised how applying philosophical skills, philosophical instruments to reading this story, you really discover this moment of revelation that suddenly in the simple story which start with waiting room to the doctor and people are waiting, one the main character is looking around other who are waiting, there she came with her husband, and she tried to feel herself as a very pious and good woman, better than others. And suddenly, through certain experience, which I don't want to be a spoiler, and I hope that you will be curious enough to read for yourself this story by Flannery O'Connor. And I think that you will be also surprised as me that in the literature you can find a very intense religious problematic, that the people who think about themselves as a chosen, as a very good Christian, suddenly they are discovering that perhaps things are different that they thought before. And daily life experiences which we go every day through, could sometimes surprise us. And I invite you to think about, to read this story by Flannery O'Connor and to make your own thoughts. And the last film will be dedicated exactly to our own thoughts, how we can learn from those who, as a professional philosophers, are doing philosophy, how we can perhaps adopt some of the methods for our own philosophizing.